I'm not just throwing this in the garbage. I'm going to, on purpose, ruin it.
Hey, let's go. Come on. I was hearing some feedback from family about the accusations being made against me.
There's a jealousy and dislike that they've had toward Robyn, especially Christine and Janelle. We were supposed to be a team working together.
I feel like I'm been gaslit like crazy.
There's been a lot of hate toward Mykelti and Tony lately, and frankly, I think it's completely undeserved. I'm not saying they're perfect, but the level of criticism they're getting feels out of proportion and often out of context. Here's why. Mykelti wasn't just a black sheep, she was excluded. A lot of people throw around labels like obnoxious or attention-seeking when talking about Mykelti, but the truth is she wasn't the problem, she was excluded. Despite being Christine's second oldest child, she was never really part of the older kids clique, which included Janelle's 3 oldest children. In fact, even though Mykelti is older than Hunter, she still wasn't included in that group. Several of Mykelti's siblings have spoken out about how cliques formed within the family, and it's clear that Mykelti was often left out. Let's not forget that Meri, a key figure in the family, has been called out multiple times for treating Mykelti poorly, a sentiment Mykelti herself has shared. Imagine growing up in a family of 18 kids, resources spread thin, and on top of that, being actively excluded by your siblings and mistreated by one of your parents. That would shape anyone. Black sheep children often develop people-pleasing behaviors or act out to gain attention because they feel unseen. Mykelti's efforts to connect with others may come off as cringy sometimes, but they're a direct result of her complicated childhood. As an adult, though, many of her siblings actually admire her level-headedness and empathy. In fact, some have even said that if Kody and the estranged kids ever reconcile, it'll likely be thanks to Mykelti. Yes, Kody's far from perfect, but every kid still wants their dad's love. Tony's humor gets misunderstood. To be fair, Tony's humor is definitely not for everyone, and I'll admit, some of his jokes don't land for me either. But calling him toxic or misogynistic? Please, take the infamous wedding loan comment. People love to criticize that, but it wasn't clueless or harmful. It was a playful jab aimed at Kody and Meri, mocking the infamous loan Meri's father took out for their wedding. Tony's dry, sarcastic humor was just doing what it does best, poking fun. The entire Brown family has said that sarcasm is a big part of their dynamic, and Tony fully embraces it. He's not perfect, he leans a little conservative for my taste, but calling him toxic completely ignores the context. Most of his comments are lighthearted or inside jokes, not malicious digs. Whether or not you find him funny, labeling him as toxic completely misses the point of how he interacts with Mykelti and the rest of the family. The wedding drama was overblown. People love to criticize Mykelti and Tony for being immature or rushing their wedding. But here's the thing, there's so much context that's ignored. Mykelti wanted an outdoor wedding, and her parents insisted on doing it in November, which is not exactly outdoor wedding friendly. It wasn't just about timing, it was about controlling their own celebration. Yes, they were eager to marry, but in the Brown family, courtship is often tied directly to marriage. The pressure to get married quickly makes total sense in that context. Plus, here's the kicker, they paid for the wedding. TLC covered most of the costs, and Tony covered the rest. The family didn't need to contribute financially, except maybe for Mykelti's dress. If they weren't paying for it, they really didn't have a say, did they? They should have just shown up and supported the couple. The lazy criticism doesn't hold water. Some fans love to call Mykelti and Tony lazy, but that accusation is totally unfounded. Sure, Mykelti's involved in an NLM, and Tony has a Patreon, but let's get real here. These kids grew up on national television without their consent. If they want to make money off the exposure now, who can blame them? Honestly, I would too. I'd probably be selling sister-wife-themed foot pics or something. And let's talk about double standards. My Kelty's a stay-at-home mom who also does an NLM, but Maddie does the same thing and doesn't get nearly as much flack. It feels like a double standard to me. What my Kelty sees in Tony. One of the most common criticisms I hear is, I don't get what my Kelty sees in Tony. But if you really watch their interactions, it's clear. Tony is her protector. He shields her emotions and stands up for her in a way that no one else seems to. His humor might be dry, but it's often a defense mechanism, deflecting attention from my Kelty's vulnerabilities and taking the brunt of things himself. Tony is probably the first real safe space my Kelty has ever had. Growing up feeling excluded and unsupported, Tony seems to have provided her with the stability and love she may never have experienced before. From everything we see on screen, he continues to be that for her. It's not hard to see that my Kelty and Tony are two people whose weirdness perfectly matches. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but it works for them, and that's what matters. We've got so much to dive into today, so let's not waste any time. Let's jump straight into it. Hey everyone, what's up? It's Elena here, and welcome back to my channel Reality Nexus X. I'm so over Christine constantly comparing her weddings. When I got married to Kody, we didn't have a reception. When I got married to Kody, we didn't have a cake. When I got married to Kody, we just had a simple dinner, and that was it. When I got married to Kody, my mom made my wedding dress and wasn't even allowed to come. It's like, we get it, Christine. Your wedding was low-key and sad. Can we move on now? If I hear, when I got married to Kody, one more time, I might just lose it. And don't even get me started on how much production loves having her rehash that same tired story. We already know it wasn't fancy, it was hush-hush, and your dress looked like a satin potato sack. No need to drag it out for every single episode. Honestly, last week, I felt so bad for David during that cake tasting. His fiancée just couldn't stop talking about her ex-husband and their disastrous wedding day. Like, dude's just trying to pick a cake, and all he hears is, when I got married to Kody. Also, what is up with those asymmetrical dresses Christine insists on wearing now? I'm not saying she needs to dress her age or anything, but those things just look cheap and tacky. Production needs a new speechwriter, because they're milking these wedding comparisons for all they're worth. But honestly, Christine was robbed of any real wedding or marriage moments, except, of course, her kids. But she's fine, and she's not the one bringing it up. It's Kody and Robyn who are still bitter about it. And of course, production is going to highlight the comparison, because it's basically the only story they have this season. Kody's hypocrisy, his favoritism, Robyn's endless sob stories, and the OG wives moving on. That's all they've got. Meri, just stop already. Stop bringing up Kody. Stop talking about the wedding, the divorce, or whatever the heck it is she thinks they're doing. She sounds like some lovesick teenager still pining for a guy who treated her like garbage for years. It's like she honestly believes there's a chance they could get back together. Seriously, just stop. Divorce is hard, I get that, but come on. This man was horrible to her for a decade, and she's still caught up in it. Honestly, I'm pretty sure she only kept up a friendship with Robyn to stay in Kody's life. Sorry, rant over. But honestly, there's a real internal battle happening here. On one hand, she knows she was treated terribly, but on the other, there's this nagging voice telling her, we really loved each other, he was great, wasn't he? It's clear from the show that she hasn't fully come to terms with just how awful he is yet. It's gotta be emotionally overwhelming to face the truth. She spent 10 years in a miserable, one-sided relationship with a guy who promised to love her forever, only to watch him shower his affection on his favorite wife. She was ignored, gaslit, financially drained, and blamed for everything. It's no wonder that facing that reality would make her so angry, not just at him, but at herself. Right now, she's burying those feelings by convincing herself that she was the one who chose to stay. I stayed because of my commitment, she tells herself, Sure, that's part of it, but it's not the full story. There's a lot more she needs to confront. Honestly, I'm glad to see she's showing a bit more anger in the confessionals. That's progress. 'Cause Kody and Robyn ever actually invite the rest of the family over. Kody loves to whine about how he's no longer part of the big family. But has he and Robyn ever made an effort to get his kids together for an event? It's hard to complain about not being invited if you're not even bothering to reach out to anyone. Oh, and let's not forget, Robyn doesn't cook, and hosting is clearly not her strong suit. Their house is basically a hoarder's paradise, so yeah, I can see why they wouldn't want anyone over to see that mess. So, Janelle and Kody, really? On Meri's birthday? I haven't read the book myself, but from all the forum chatter, it sounds like Janelle and Kody were originally set to marry on Meri's birthday, and only changed the date when Meri threw a fit about it. But seriously, why would they pick that date in the first place? Did they seriously forget Meri's birthday, or was this some kind of twisted power move? Let's be real here, both Janelle and Kody were being total jerks. I'm betting they chose that date on purpose, knowing it would force Kody to spend Meri's birthday with Janelle. There's no way they didn't know what they were doing. Neither one of them has a clean conscience in this situation. I get that Janelle's popular and all, but let's not pretend that planning to marry your former sister-in-law's husband on her birthday was some innocent mistake. That was straight up cruel. It had to be intentional. There's no way it wasn't. Honestly, that's just cold. Sure, she might seem like a cool person otherwise, but that move was downright nasty, even if she wasn't planning to go through with the marriage. If you honestly believe it wasn't on purpose, then you really don't get how plural marriage works. These wives are constantly playing mind games, whether openly or behind the scenes. It's built into the system. Is this really the end? Or are we just pretending it is? I mean, does anyone else get the feeling that Sister Wives is on its last legs? It's starting to feel like they've run out of ideas and are just replaying the same tired drama. Nothing new, nothing exciting. I'd say the show's a broken record, but even a record would have more variety at this point. But hey, if you're desperate for updates on the OG3, don't worry, they've got their social media game on point. So if you're thirsting for their latest selfies or posts, you'll find it there. The only ones truly MIA are Robyn and Kody. But don't fret, the eagle-eyed stalkers, fans, in this group will keep you in the loop. I'm kidding, of course, but seriously, you'll find them everywhere. So, is this the end? Well, unless the family gets tired of the TLC paycheck, this show will probably keep chugging along. It's one of the network's top earners, and let's be real, someone mentioned a few months back that it was their third highest revenue-generating show. So yeah, as long as the numbers stay high, Sister Wives will keep going until we're all begging for it to stop. The Secret Life of Kody's Only Wife, Diaries of Robyn. Dear Diary. Well, Kody's off at some gun show in Arkansas today. He's not even in Flagstaff. I specifically told him no hobbies, but he insisted on going because, apparently, we need more money now that Dinglamary's Lulero money has completely dried up. He insists it's important, so here we are. I'm exhausted just thinking about it, so I flop down on the couch and let my mind wander. I remember being 18, back in Utah, just scrapbooking and breakdancing, all while guarding my purity for Kody. It was such a simpler time, before I ended up with 3 kids from the evil Mr. Jessup. But Kody assures me that because we're soulmates, those kids are practically his too, since he fathered them spiritually. He says it with such confidence that I almost believe it. That's why he's such a great father to them, and why I had to make that family portrait with them for him. The gate buzzer rings, snapping me out of my thoughts. Oh, I bet it's something I drunkenly bought on Etsy last week, because Janelle refused to build a house on Kody Pass with me. The empty land, there is such a reminder of how everything with my sister wives fell apart. So depressing. I'm just waiting for someone to make me carry something heavy on it one day. I check the security camera, and surprise, it's the mailman. I speak to him over the intercom, explaining that I can't collect the package today because it needs to sit outside for a week due to coronavirus rules. He looks at me like I've lost my mind, saying, "Coronavirus was half a decade ago." I tell him to toss it over the Golden Gate anyway, but apparently he needs a signature. Of course, just as I'm about to give up, Ariella suddenly charges down the driveway, snarling, and starts biting the poor guy's ankle. I have to rush out and pull her off, luring her with a T-bone steak. She's on that paleo diet like her father. Crisis averted. After that, I retreat to bed with a cup of hot lemon water and try to play Wordle. But who am I kidding? I don't know how to spell. I call Kody for help, and he suggests shy pretty wife. Nice try, Kody, but that's a sentence, not a word. Finally, he says loyal, and lo and behold, it's the right word. I get it in one. I remind him that if he's going to be away from the house for more than 8 hours, he owes me money for my purple clothes fund. He responds, suggesting we need more cash for a bigger house for more art, whatever that means, and tells me I should ask Aurora and Brianna to get jobs. I remind him that they're only tender-aged children in their early to mid-20s. The thought of them working outside of packaging up my jewelry orders is, well, no, I'm not comfortable with that. Kody says fine, and we'll just rely on Janelle and Meri to keep the land on Kody Pass. Feeling somewhat better, I head to the kitchen and find Aurora. She's actually learned to wash and dry the dishes. Maybe in 10 more years, she won't need a nanny. She's such a smart, tender-aged child. I grab a glass of hot water and head out to Kohl's for some retail therapy. In Kohl's, I pull out some stunning tops, a plum-striped blouse, a cerise floral one, a burgundy shirt, and a puce knitted top. I have amazing taste, if I do say so myself. But then, in the fitting room, I completely lose it. I start crying, thinking about how my family's all abandoned me when we should have been together from the start, back when they were 20 and I was 8. I film myself crying, of course. The world needs to see this. I end up buying everything, because why not, and head home to rest. Hopefully tomorrow will be better, but no promises. In Season 10, Episode 5, there's a moment that really caught my attention. Leon is grappling with Meri's catfish drama, specifically how she broke their trust. The director then asks them if they still want to live a polygamous lifestyle, as they once claimed they would when they were kids. What I found fascinating wasn't just that Leon said they no longer felt polygamy was for them, but the reasoning behind it. They mention how, now that they're in college and living on their own, they've developed critical thinking skills. Skills that, apparently, didn't fully kick in until they left home. It's interesting, isn't it? We often hear about how people discover themselves after they leave the nest, but I've never really heard anyone put it in terms of critical thinking. You can definitely hear it in Leon's tone and the way they approach conversations now. There's this noticeable shift in how they express themselves and engage with the world around them. I'd love to hear more about Leon's journey with religion. They were once so devout, but college seemed to be the turning point for them to reevaluate and change their path. Those kinds of stories are always so compelling. Of course, I totally understand why they keep their personal journey private. They don't owe anyone an explanation. But I can't help but think that their story would be insightful and could spark some really interesting conversations. So Robyn's been going on about how her kids and herself were never really accepted into the family, huh? Has she forgotten that Meri legally divorced Kody so he could adopt her kids? I mean, how much more inclusive can they get? They basically made it official, welcome to the family, with paperwork and everything. But hey, let's not forget the other side of the story. How accepting was Robyn of the original crew? Barriers go both ways, you know. They can be built from either side. I get that things might have been rough at first, especially right after the big move when they were all trying to settle in. I'm sure the older kids felt pretty displaced, watching their dad drool over the little babies while they got punished or ignored for acting out. Sure, it was a lot to deal with, but eventually they did seem to grow and start accepting the new family dynamic, even before the adoption. Watch the old episodes and you'll see Aurora practically glued to Kody, throwing herself at him for hugs whenever he'd come back from a trip. Of all the kids, the one who got the short end of the stick the most was Savannah. That little girl was cute as a button, but she was kind of left out. And let's talk about Robyn's relationships, or rather, lack of them. Remember when she showed up at Gwen's engagement party and Mitch was sitting there with one of my Kelty's kids on his lap? One of the twins, Robyn's babies, she literally hid in a closet for. And did she even acknowledge him? Nope, not even a second glance. It's like she just doesn't care unless you're fawning over her and her kids. Even after all the drama, the older kids tried to include Aurora, Brianna, and Dayton in the sibling gift exchange, but Robyn had to swoop in and try to take over. Classic move. Honestly, I don't think Robyn really wants her kids to be fully accepted by the OGs. Why? Because she's scared they might start realizing what's going on. If they bond with the older kids, they might see her for what she really is, a lying, controlling freak. And we can't have that. Gotta keep those teens and toddlers under her thumb, right? It's refreshing to see Meri's behavior when she's around her friends. There was a time, especially in the middle seasons, when I found myself on Kody's side, seeing Meri as this sad, draining figure who seemed like more of a problem than a part of the family. I'll admit, at one point, I even thought it might be best if she were kicked out of the family. But then I saw her with her friends. She's lively, sweet, and clearly comfortable in a way I never expected. It completely changed my view. The real issue, I've realized, was mostly Kody, and to some degree, the rest of the family. Sure, they weren't entirely to blame, but Meri just didn't fit into their dynamic, and that unhappiness was feeding into everything. Now, I genuinely feel for her. I'm going to take this a bit further, but her situation made me think about other women who face similar issues. Those who are subtly disliked by their husbands and children, because the men drain them and paint them in a negative light to the rest of the family. It's heartbreaking to consider how different Meri's relationship with everyone might have been if Kody hadn't been so negative. That said, I'm still not Meri's biggest fan. Her alleged behavior towards some of the kids, Christine and Janelle, still rubs me the wrong way. But I genuinely hope she's happy. I hope she's found friends who bring out the best in her, and I really hope she meets someone who loves her the way she deserves. I also hope she's rebuilding her relationship with Leon, though I'm not sure where they stand right now. If you know, feel free to fill me in. I want the best for her and for them. Sometimes it's easy to forget that we're watching a real family with complex dynamics. Meri's behavior, at least in part, seems like that of many women who have suffered from intimate partner abuse, isolation, and the pain of growing up in a high-control religious environment. These women often fight back in the only ways they know, even if they can't fully acknowledge the abuse they're enduring. It's not uncommon to try and regain control in whatever way possible, even if it's not healthy. That's not an excuse for all the pain Meri may have caused, but it's a lot to untangle and heal from. In my years in mental health, I've worked with so many women who weren't believed to be victims simply because they didn't fit the perfect victim mold. They lashed out, even at people who weren't the source of their abuse, because they didn't understand what was happening to them. That's exactly how I see Meri sometimes. It's like watching someone suffering from abuse and then criticizing them for not fully understanding the extent of it yet. It just makes everything worse. Healing takes time, compassion, and understanding. TLDR. Meri's behavior mirrors that of many women who aren't seen as perfect victims and therefore struggle to get the support they need. The men and religion in their lives have done a number on their self-esteem and beliefs. and a little compassion can go a long way in helping them heal. So, I'm watching My 5 Wives for the first time, and I'm pretty sure the family was once part of the AUB, the Apostolic United Brethren, but they left the faith before the show started. In this episode, one of the older boys mentions that when they were still with the group, their dad made them keep their hair short, but now that they've ditched the faith, he lets them grow it out if they want. The dad even says, "I used to think long hair was wrong on a guy." This got me thinking, maybe the AUB really did have a beef with Kody over his hair after all. I always thought he was just exaggerating that whole thing. Turns out, it might have been a real issue for them. Who knew? And let's be real, Kody's faith is really just a cover for his vanity. He pretty much admitted that his looks and image are more important to him than any relationship with God. I mean, come on, he's not religious at all. His so-called faith was just a convenient excuse to have multiple women around him and keep them all in his life. That's honestly the only reason he's clinging to this faith nonsense in the first place. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and much love to you all.